Guys, this is my infographic on pollutants monitored in the Singapore air. On the right, we have some key components in the Singapore air. On the left, we have a graph monitored using the Pollutant Standard Index, and this graph goes from 2011 to 2020, and it also shows the quality of air after COVID-19. Thank you.
Okay, this slide is talking about the impact of COVID on Singapore's economy and how it developed until today. So as shown in 2020, due to COVID, the economy shrank by 4%, and one of the reasons was the decline in trading. On the other hand, in 2023, after enhancements in many sectors, the GDP growth rate improved to 4%.
For my infographic, I'm comparing a developed country, which is Singapore, and India. So for Singapore, more than 55% of their buildings are green. Green building can cut down consumption by 20 to 30%, which can overall reduce the need for lighting and air conditioning, and which produces a lower carbon impact on the environment.
For my infographic, I'm looking at the real estate markets in UAE and Singapore, and the graph clearly shows that Singapore has a much more booming real estate market compared to UAE, and that's because of its more hospitable environment, which makes it more desirable, whereas in UAE it's a lot hotter, limiting outdoor activities and necessitating heavy air conditioner.
So basically my chart compares annual rainfall in Singapore and Pakistan, as climate change impacts are pretty obvious on Singapore's annual rainfall rate, causing fluctuations but generally a considerable increase and eventually affecting infrastructure and causing excessive floods and rising sea levels.
So why do we consider raising temperature in Singapore as a major problem? Well, actually, because its impact to human health, and it can also cause a rise in a sea level, and which can be increase the risks of floods and threats to biodiversity. And in my image, I compared the global temperature compared to Singapore.
And to also combat that, by 2030, Singapore sets out to ambitiously replace all regular cars with electric vehicles by increasing the number of charging stations strewn around the city from 100 to 2016, and also increasing the number of EVs, electric vehicles, which constituted 20.6% of the 2,386 new cars registered this year's July.
This is my infographic about public transport usage of Singapore. This is important for Singapore's development towards sustainability. The more it's used, the lesser pollution emitted per person. The government has discouraged usage of cars and has achieved impressive results.
Climate change surface temperature. I've compared Singapore to Dominican Republic. On average, every decade, surface temperature increases by 0.25 in Singapore, which is a developed country, whereas in Dominican Republic, the surface temperature on average every decade increases by 0.1 degrees Celsius, which is developing country.